Whenever you're ready, we can read the preamble and call the meeting to order, and then I have an announcement before we call the roll.
We'd like to call the January 27th, 2022 Landmarks Commission meeting to order. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's Open Meeting Section 101.021 of the Codified Ordinance of Cleveland, Ohio, 1976, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meeting will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be prior to taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting has the opportunity heard, we ask that you use the raised hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raised hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile versions and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or the facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, clicking the raised hand function icon again and muting your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located at the bottom of the WebEx screen. All meeting activities are recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also live streamed via YouTube. All requests to speak on a particular matter via the website or email have been considered. We have also received emails from those who provided written comments on a particular matter. We'd like to call the January 27th, 2022 meeting to order. Mr. Pettit, would you like to start with announcements?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to let the commission know that we have a change in membership of the commission today. And it probably won't be the last one we have in the next couple months. The director of MOCAP has appointed Carter Edmond to be the new representative on the Cleveland Landmarks Commission. He is an architect. He is the manager of the Division of Architecture and Site Development, and I just want to welcome him here today. He is replacing Adrian Bailey, and I just want to make sure we acknowledge and thank her for all her years of service on the commission. It's kind of remarkable. She has been the designee from the Division of Architecture since 2016, but she has also served on the commission off and on since 1998, which I think is pretty remarkable. She may be the oldest serving member in the commission's history. I just want to make sure that we recognize that and thank her for her service, and we'll find a way to memorialize that milestone for her years on the commission. But thank you, Adrian, and welcome, Carter.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to quickly say thank you for the opportunity for being on the Landmark Commission all these years. And I enjoy working with everybody that's on the current commission right now. So Carter would be good addition to the Landmark Commission. So I will be coming in, if he's not available, but he's the member of the commission right now representing MOCAP. Thank you again. I enjoyed these years of being on the commission. One of my favorite project, and when me and Don walked the Cuyahoga River for the Hewitt Hurlick that was still on the river. So that was the great engineering structure that was down there. So hopefully in the future, piece of it somehow will come up on that. So thank you again. I don't want to hold up the meeting.
Well, Adrian, it's been a pleasure and an honor to work, with you on the commission since my tenure for the last 5 or so years. Thank you for all of your commentary and insight into every project and thoughtful responses. Thank you for all that you've done for the commission.
Adrian, I'd like to reiterate that thanks from our division for your service on the commission.
Thank you.
With that, we have our new member and our legacy member, which is Ms. Bailey. I'd like to ask Mr. Pettit to please call roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Anderson.
Here.
Mr. Bonesi. Mr. Colicchio. Mr. Dryer.
Here.
Mr. Edmond.
Here.
Director Fields. Mr. Strickland.
Here.
Mr. Tarasik.
Here.
Ms. Trott.
Here.
We are also joined today by our AmeriCorps member, Emily Spezia Schwiff. Carl Brunges is hosting the meeting, and we're joined by Kevin Roberts from the Law Department. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Well, then we will begin with our certificates of appropriateness. We'd like to call the first applicant forward. If you could unmute your mic, state your name for our record, and then tell us about your project. First applicant is located at 10011 Clifton Boulevard, Big House residential development, new construction of 6 units. And before we begin, in the interest of time, since we do have a fairly lengthy agenda, we'd like to ask everybody, if you have appeared in front of us before, to please just review the revisions that have been made since we last saw you, and keep the commentary to be fairly concise.
Kyle Hulawat with Bowen. So a brief overview of the changes that we've made. We have reduced the overall square footage of the property. There was a unit in the back corner, which you just saw in the lower left-hand corner. That unit has been removed from the project. There were 5 total units in here. We are now at 6 units, but we have 2 smaller units up front. We have also added a covered patio and porch off the front facing Clifton. There are 2 of those now. And that's the summary of the changes. We're at the corner of West and Clifton. It's a 6-unit condo building, all garage parking, same materials, same look to it. And that sums it up.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to let you get to maybe a rendering so we can see the project. We'll let the presentation catch up. We will start with feedback from the local design review committee.
Madam Chair, this did not go back to the design review committee. It was determined by staff that the changes were not substantial enough, that the overall project hadn't changed substantially since we saw it. So although we did keep them informed about the changes, we did not take it back to the committee. I do want to point out that there was a community meeting held last week, hosted by Council Member Brian Mooney. It was agreed that one of the community members, Nicholas Froning, would be here today to speak to the feedback that was given at that meeting. The commission has received emails from members of the community, both in support and against the project, and those have all been shared with the commission. And also there have been changes made in response to some of the feedback that was received last week by the applicants. So that's where we are today. And Councilman Mooney is with us today, as well as as Nick Froning from the neighborhood. Thank you.
I would also like to add the footprint of the building has not changed since last time. The massing, for the most part, has stayed the same. In fact, it's been reduced based on removing the unit in the back corner. And then, yeah, we took some of the comments that we received, kind of unified some of the windows and the transoms to give a more unified look to it. So yeah.
And maybe if we can go back to the site plan, I was at the community meeting, I can go through those real quickly. So here's the site plan. What you would notice, one of the comments, because the site plan wasn't completely done, so it didn't show all the walks to the sidewalk. There's concrete walks from 3 of the entry areas, but the 2 large patios on the corner, we have stepping stones instead. And that's so it's just not a massive amount of concrete everywhere on the front yard. And that's to take that from some of the comments we got from the neighborhood. The other thing we did is you can see on the bottom left-hand corner, so it's the southwest corner of the building. We put a dumpster enclosure, which was asked for by the neighborhood. So we added that. Go to the elevations. Okay, so this elevation right here, one of the comments was the transom windows on Clifton were different than the ones on West Boulevard. Those are all unified. They're divided light transoms, and they match the ones on West Boulevard. So those were the large comments as part of the meeting, and we incorporated them into the drawings.
Thank you for that summary. Councilman Mooney, would you like to have any words on the project?
I'd like to let Mr. Froning go first, the community representative.
Hi, Mr. Floney.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and the Commission. I appreciate the opportunity. So I've been in the neighborhood for a few years, and I was designated the community rep for this meeting. A couple things I'd like to just bring to attention to the Commission that we've learned today. One being that since submission to the Commission for approval, there have been additional changes by Brick House and this project based upon that community meeting. And so I think that's slightly concerning that we're still changing the plans. One of the overarching recommendations from the community, and as mentioned by Mr. Petit, is that this did not go back to local design review, and the community members believe that it should have gone back because of the changes in density and otherwise. As it relates to this commission and the comments that have been collected from the community in support and against, a lot of it deals with the south elevation. If we look at the south elevation, anywhere you stand at Jean Francis's house, you stand at Wendy Green, Robert, you stand at anybody's house on West Boulevard facing Clifton, you're going to clearly see that the materials on the back of the house do not conform with that on either the west, east, or north elevations. And there's that change. And so the recommendations in support and against have all been that this should be a brick structure. Some of the other comments related to this commission would be the preservation of materials that individual unit owners are required to utilize in the historic warehouse district, whether it be the wood windows or the changes that we saw with the project now. Ultimately, I think that we have community members for and against, but they wanted to see it go back to the local review for their comments to those experts in the neighborhood, and then in addition, see that the building materials such as brick be uniform. One of the comments was no house on West Boulevard has a change in composition of exterior finish, whether it be from brick to siding or siding to it just doesn't exist. And I think the comments I got from residents are looking to keep our neighborhood as historic as it is, and the charm that we all know exists. And so again, I thank you for your time, and I thank you for your review. And the community would ask that this be continued and sent back to local review. Thank you.
Thank you for the comment and the summary for the neighborhood. Councilman Mooney, would you like to comment next?
Sure. Thank you, all members of the commission. This project has been through design review once and has been before Landmarks twice and BZA. I've had community meetings in the past and originally learned about this. I was only given 48 hours notice that this was going to Landmarks, so I asked for a continuance. Because I didn't even have the plans. And representing the neighborhood, it's my duty to bring information to those people that I represent. So after that, I started an email chain with what turned out to be about 50 people in the neighborhood. And we held a community meeting a week ago today. And 6 neighbors came, and Mr. Bowen came, the architect, and we held about an hour meeting. We discussed things, people voiced concerns, had questions. And then Mr. Bowen did get back to me with answers to those questions and some changes that I did share with all the neighbors. And so in the interest of timeliness, a lot of people forwarded me or Mr. Brunjes or to Nick to Landmarks their responses to this. I know Landmarks is concerned about the materials used and the appearance primarily. And so to that, the changes from the last time we're here is a reduction in square feet. And I think everybody's pleased that the unit above the garage, the second floor reduction, not the footprint, that there's been a reduction in square feet, which is the massing of the building. So that's a positive change. In addition, there were some eaves on Clifton that have turned into small balconies. I believe those are nice, good features that Mr. Bowen spoke about. I think also a lot of the concern from the neighbors had to do with the density, and there being 6 units in all these garbage cans. So in response to that, they did say that they would put the dumpster enclosure. They still may have individual garbage cans, but at least there'll be an enclosure that would hide them and provide some cover. The other thing that I'm concerned about, but I believe the builder will meet this, is just the driveway. If you look at this drawing here, there's a house just to the south of it, and they share a common driveway into the back, and then it splits off. So I did review the drawings and make sure that they don't interfere with the existing easement, the resident that owns the house just south of it, so it doesn't impede the easement. And I hope, and I'm confident, that Mr. Bowen and the builder will work with that resident just to make sure that it's a good process, since they're going to be replacing most of the driveway that he uses and his little portion. So I have put him in touch with the resident, met with the resident, been on site, and Mr. Bowen is, so that's a primary concern of mine, but I think they will address that. Now, the neighborhood, like I said, this has been a volatile process. And I think primarily, talking to the neighbors, almost everybody's very unhappy with the density. There being 6 units. They didn't like 5 units. They would have been okay with maybe 4, but to move from 5 to 6, they're very much opposed to that. There was also concerns about the traffic, the impact at this intersection of cars coming out of the driveway. And then they're concerned about there only being 1 parking space for the 2 smaller units that we have now, and wondering if that's going to force parking onto West Boulevard. A lot of the residents were uniformly upset about the tax abatement. They thought it was unfair that they get tax abatement, and that it's all with the typical arguments that they have to pay, that they should pay their fair share. That just places more of a burden on the homeowners. Many of the residents were unfair about the materials being used because of the exemption we have, where new construction does not have to comply with the other traditional historic district exact standards, meaning they don't have to have wood windows that everybody else is subject to. So a lot of the residents, felt that was unfair, that they should have to build it to historic materials. Of course, a lot of people were also very upset, and that's more of a BOZA arguing about the variances that were previously given on this site. But I still will say the design of the building does look good. And I think everybody's expectations are if this is approved, they hope that it's built to look like what it appears within the picture. And as Nick said, yeah, there was a lot of people upset about the south elevation. And a lot of people, this previously was a stucco building, but at Landmarks last March, there was the desire to move it to brick. And so they did the brick on Clifton and West Boulevard. We did approach the developer about using brick on the other side, but because of it's already previously been proven cost, they indicated that was not possible. But so that is just wanted to give voice to the summary of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Mooney. We will now open the floor for questions and comments from the commission. Mr. Brunges.
Sorry, just a little bit more on staff. I want to address some of the issues that were brought up. When staff decided that this would be coming back here, I did share the revised plans with the design review committee out of courtesy so they could see the changes. There were two pieces of feedback. One was that the balconies on the Clifton side seemed to not be even, and that ideally they would be either the same projection, either smaller or larger. And they wanted to confirm that the site plan still included the 4 oak trees that were in the original submission when it was approved. Also, even through the design review process, the design review committee originally gave that, and I will read their original, is it was a true stucco to be considered that was later changed to brick, but then they approved EIFS for the interior motor courts and facades. So there's always been the two materials approved throughout the process. That the windows are aluminum clad wood with exterior mountains. Which is also an approved replacement for wood windows that we do consistently. So they are meeting the spirit of the Secretary of the Interior standards and having higher quality materials for their windows. But I just want to confirm that the trees were a big deal to the committee, and I just want to confirm with the developers and the architect that those are still in the plan. Thank you.
Yeah, landscaping hasn't changed, so it's still all on the plan. And the south elevation, with the exception of the second floor above the garage that was removed, has stayed the same. So the material has stayed the same on the south elevation in the motor court.
I was muted. Thank you for that additional feedback from staff and or response. We'll open up the floor to the commission now for questions and comments. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Bowen, could you clarify, you said the material has not changed on the motor court or the south elevation? The way it's depicted here, it looks like could be vinyl siding. Can you confirm what that material is?
It's a fiber cement board siding, so it's not vinyl. Like a hardy board siding. So something,
Hardy board.
yeah, something that's gonna be more durable and last longer.
Yeah, I mean, we approved, we approved that material routinely. I don't have any problem with the use of hardy at the motor court or the south elevation. And previously in the presentation, we have expressed concerns about coordination with the neighbor to the south in terms of the drive. And as the councilman mentioned, it sounds like you are complying with any easement restrictions and coordinating with that neighbor. That's certainly positive. I think it's a beautiful building and will enhance that corner. And I strongly favor the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also want to say that first off, that I'm in agreement with Mr. Strickland. I think it really is a beautiful building. I think you really did a great job with this design. And it looks like you're using some very high quality materials. I'm just curious why these changes are being made. So yeah, if you could fill me in, I was wondering why you are going in this direction.
Want me to answer that, Chair? Yeah, so I'll answer for the developer because he's not on the phone, but they couldn't get the 5 units to pencil. And so having some smaller units and going to 6 units actually made the project viable. They have 2 pre-bought units and they didn't want to default on that. So they wanted to keep on moving forward. And that's why we went from 5 to 6. So 2 of the units are actually a lot more affordable than most brick houses projects. As you know, they're $700,000-800,000. They have a project in Rocky River. The starting price is $1.5 million. So this gives you high quality materials, beautiful design for someone that might be an empty nester or a first time homeowner. 2 of the units would be smaller and more affordable. But he gets more dollars a square foot because they're smaller.
I see. Yeah, because I was looking at this project in relation to other new construction that has either sold recently or is on the market, and the price per square foot was definitely higher. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's because of, the stipulations that they conform with the historic guidelines, or if there's other factors that enter into that higher price.
Yeah, I don't know if you've gone through one of Brickhouse's projects before, but the interior build out's very beautiful and high quality materials. So they are more expensive to build.
Yeah, they definitely have a higher price per square foot. So I don't know if that might be impacting the marketability. The other thing that I'm kind of curious about, I have to apologize. I inadvertently deleted the link with the floor plans for the new revised units. Right now, these are being sold as like townhouses. It's not a condominium.
It's a condominium.
It is a condominium.
Yes.
So it is a condominium with common areas, and you own the inside and everybody else owns the rest of it collectively.
Yes. So
Okay.
managed by a homeowners association and maintained by a homeowners association, but you will have the right to occupy your unit.
Okay. All right. Because my understanding, I thought it was a townhouse, a regular individual. Each person owns everything individually. Okay, that's good clarification. I appreciate that. So that has not changed.
That has not changed. It's under 1B number, so it can't change.
Okay.
If it was townhouses, there would be separate B numbers for building and housing.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Mr. Edmund?
Thank you. Looking at what has changed since the previous approved version. So I understand on the north Clifton elevation, which is showing here at the top, the 2 balconies are new, and those were just smaller entries with a little roof stoop previously. Is that correct?
Correct.
I think that's a really nice change. That's a very positive addition. I also think that the difference in size between the 2, I think, is actually compositionally preferable and appropriate. It also reflects the fact that one of them is leading to a larger unit and one is a smaller unit. So it sort of translates a little bit what's going on in the interior. But In terms of what's changed from what was previously approved, I think that is a very positive move.
Thank you.
Ms. Anderson, did you have an additional question or did your hand just stay up by accident?
I'm sorry. Let me pull my hand down.
Okay. I guess I'll do my comments next. So the community asked this, and I just want to follow up on it because maybe I didn't hear it in the presentation. With the addition of the 6th unit, where are the residents going to park? Did you split the parking? Is that what happened? The one in the back now has single parking, all the garages all.
If you go to the first floor plan, floor plan. Well, you could, there, yeah, you could see it in the site plan too. So the site plan's fine. You can see it on the elevation here too. The top left elevation, there's actually a wall separating them too, but they're 2 smaller doors. So each one of the small units, the affordable units, let's call them, will have 1 parking space and they're separate doors and it's a separate stall. So they're totally separated.
And if the resident has more than 1 car, what is the plan by the developer for those additional cars?
I don't know that
Is it on street?
has a plan for that. I would hope someone buying it would have a plan for that, but I think people are trying to go to less cars, and hopefully people will start engaging and riding their bicycles and stuff like that instead of having cars. And the units are smaller, and it's kind of set up for people that are either empty nesters or you know, first-time homeowners. I can't imagine what someone would do if they had more than 1 car, but there isn't parking for more than 1 car for those 2 units.
Okay. What is the width of the drive? I know we asked this question previously, you know, knowing that you are, you have 12 cars potentially using that single driveway. What is the width of the drive?
Go back to, I don't have it with me.
I don't have it with me either.
Is it 12 feet?
Might be. I mean, yeah, I have no idea.
While you're talking, I'm going to find out.
Okay, I think we expressed this in the last, presentation, and you have the easements to go onto your neighbors, but what's your staging area for cars, knowing you are near an intersection and people could be turning in and out of that drive. I mean, 12 cars is a fair amount to the neighborhood's, comment that you're trying to you have the potential that you're going to need staging for cars, either coming in or out or both. Going in is on the street, but if someone's trying to come in and out, where's that additional car going? I think previously it's where the trash was, or is shown now, which I think is a good location for the trash, but I think the logistics of the width of the existing drive to me still is concerning. I agree with the neighborhood. I think last time when we reviewed this and reviewed the material change, I made the recommendation to change that south elevation to brick. As we continue to look at it and look at the site in context, I still hold strong to that too, that I think that south elevation for the east portion of the building should be brick. The garages, in my opinion, can be maintained as the hardy board. But the south elevation, since it is so visible between in the house to the south, I personally feel that south elevation should be brick also. And the balconies, I feel, he worked very hard to try to make this a very sort of relentlessly symmetrical, or not symmetrical, but uniform style that I personally probably agree that I would prefer the balconies on the Clifton Avenue to be closer in size than they currently are, because it's your east elevation is fairly very the detailing is very continuous or consistent, and the balcony's difference does to me throw out throw off the consistency that you've worked so hard to create on this elevation, on the north elevation. And then finally, the two small windows that are on the second floor and first floor adjacent to the large bay window and above that, the bay window, those do not have extra applied muttons. Can you tell us why you've decided not to put muttons in those three windows?
We can add them. I mean, I don't think it's a big deal. I mean, it's something that we can look at and we can add them.
Just looking for the consistency
Yeah.
across the elevation, and the bay windows have, its own sort of language and vernacular, where those two windows being adjacent to the other windows to me seem a little foreign.
Yeah,
I think
the issue
consistency in
in
the
mind.
elevation would be nice. That's my comments. I am concerned though about the drive width and the cars, especially with the increased density.
It's 12 feet.
So a single lane drive in and out for 12 cars does still concern me. Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson, I see your hand up.
One quick question. I am a little concerned about the driveway as well. I guess it's two questions. Is it possible for somebody to pull out of these garages and orient their cars so they're driving forward out of the driveway as opposed to backing out of it?
Yes.
Okay, and my other concern is snow removal. Where do you put the snow?
Probably like on my street. Especially right now, it seems piled up everywhere. But yeah, so, depending on how they remove the snow, it would probably sit on the tree lawn, most of it. I'm not a plow master. I do my own driveway and some of my neighbors' driveways. I would also tell you the 12-foot is kind of consistent with the apartment buildings in the condo complex across from my house. And they have many more people than that. There seems to be a underlying courtesy of people kind of holding back until the other person pulls in and vice versa. And we're talking about a lot less cars here than what you might find in the apartment buildings and the condos by my house. I live right on Lake and 110th Street.
Oh,
I think it works well. We could widen it, but I would worry that would look pretty imposing. I'd rather do less concrete than more concrete.
yeah, I'm just concerned about, auxiliary parking. My experience has been that people in this price point, they have cars. So if you have a couple, they're each going to have a car. And I think people are going to be just going to electric vehicles and that kind of thing. I don't think they're going to necessarily be relying on their bicycle for, their daily transportation needs. Especially when you look outside, nobody's on their bicycle now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the smaller units may just have a single person occupying the space too. I mean, there's a fair number of people that probably want their own home and don't have that opportunity for a smaller house that has high quality. Brick House tends to pick up markets. I remember when they did 21 Coltman, that was back in 2008. No one was buying anything and it sold out. So they seem to figure out where the market is and they get their units sold.
Yeah, well, fortunately, they have a pretty good realtor, and they did it as well with 21 Coltman. So, hopefully they'll be able to work things out with Ted. But that is a concern.
Okay.
Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Bonazzi?
Before we take a vote, Madam Chair, I just have to express that I need to recuse myself due to a conflict of interest on this project. Thank you.
Thank you for stating that prior to the vote. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would move to approve the project as presented, just with the addition of the exterior ply buttons on those 3 windows on the Clifton facade.
I second that move.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Bonazzi is recusing himself. Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott,
Yes.
the motion passes unanimously with 1 recusal.
Thank you very much for all your time.
Thank you. We look forward to this project moving forward.
We will do it very quickly.
Move on to our next applicant, located at 2817 Detroit Avenue, revisions for plans for residential rooftop patio, parapet, and stairs.
This is Graham Veazey, jumping in, the owner of the building, and resident right there. All we're requesting of this commission is a adaptation of what's been approved already. So we're at the corner of West 28th and Detroit Avenue. Essentially the parapet wall, we're looking to extend the height of it. So if you see the green areas where we're going to put an outdoor area, if you want to keep progressing. This is the existing conditions. As you can see, it's this like kind of pinkish drive it that we're eliminating and adding additional materials. We're not going to change anything with the Tiger mural, where Amba, Doug Katz's new concept, is going to open in the next month or so. To keep progressing. This is just plan, shows the green area of where this outdoor space is going to be on the roof of the CMU building. Let me keep moving. Keep moving. So this is the kind of khaki or beige color, shows the additional adaptation to the already approved plans. The sense is that you're not adding an additional material, but just extending that wall higher, so that we're not putting a fence or some other things that would kind of clutter that corner. I'm gonna keep moving. You can see the stair from the deck, which is cantilevered off the 3-story brick structure. Keep moving. This is, again, already approved material list and sequencing, but you're seeing how we're just extending it a little bit higher in order not to put a fence or anything like that. So using the building as that barrier. Keep moving. Not to be seen from the street or the sidewalk, but just putting a synthetic grass system on that roof surface so that our 1-year-old daughter can run around. Keep moving. And so this is the approved permitted set. And then we've got a side by side, which I think is the next slide. It's not, but I think it would be helpful. Yeah. So on the right is what this commission has approved, and then on the left is what, you know, the revisions that we're seeking today.
All right, thank you for the presentation. We'll start with feedback from the local commission. I'm sorry, committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. Nate Law, Neighborhood Development Associate at Ohio City Incorporated. This project was reviewed and approved. There were 2 conditions on approval. There was discussion about extending the wall 4 feet west to give extra massing at street level. There was also some concern about how the mural and cornices interact with the parapet wall. And also the 3x8 privacy panels cannot cover all of the deck. That was also in the approval. Otherwise, they were generally supportive of this project.
And for the commission's benefit, west would be towards the existing building. So if you're looking at the left elevation on the top, so top left elevation, the 4 feet would go towards the building. So they just didn't want it to end abruptly. If I could annotate, I would, but it heads.
It's within the floor plan, the updated floor plan.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, the feedback and the summary of feedback from the committee. We will open the floor then for questions or comments from the commission. Mr. Edmund. I'm sorry.
Thank you. So just for clarification, where the parapet extends over the mural, the parapet would continue in the same white and gray materials that you have over the corner building, just over the mural.
Correct.
Okay. And so the parapet and the stair are the 2 new components. Is that correct?
Correct.
And I know looking in reality and perspective is a little different than looking in elevation. The stair does look like a fairly prominent structure on there, and I wonder if it would be feasible to rotate it so that it's going along the taller building instead of projecting out. That might also give you more usable space on the roof if you chose to do that.
Issue is we're utilizing the existing window penetration. So if you look on the top elevation here to the right, there's a partial window shown. So if it went, it would.
So the lower window, it would conflict with that lower window.
Yeah, exactly.
If I might interject too, Graydon Petznick from Cleveland Draw, the architect. We're also utilizing some of the structure below to help support the stair, which tailored the position that it is. It was a view out of the existing building, as well as using the structure of the building below to place the stair there. In the photographs at the beginning of the presentation, the stairs declines as it goes away from the building. And with the setbacks as they seem to be in the best location to minimize it from street and surrounding buildings.
Thank you.
Ms. Petrus, I'm sorry. I'm not doing great with names today. Ms. Petrus, you're joined us. Welcome. You have questions or comments?
Yes, I'm sorry. I just realized that my headphones weren't in. I was wanting to know about the mural. Is that an existing mural that's on the building already, or are you all incorporating a new mural?
That's existing. It was part of the Creative Fusion cohort that we all worked on together. That's Michaela Pici, a Italian artist.
Mural.
Yeah, Italian artist who lives in Berlin. And one of the components of Amba, which is the Doug Katz restaurant that's moving into that space, is the way that we've designed it. We're embracing that so that it will be around way beyond the 5-year commitment that we had made to the artists when we commissioned it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the commission? All right, I will give mine. Did you explore any other materials for the handrails as first on the stairs? Because right now you do have the enclosed porch above, but because of enclosing that stairs, I think it's going to make it very prominent from the neighbors and the passerbys approaching and going westbound on Detroit. Do you explore any other materials like a metal handrail to try to minimize its visibility?
We did look at some other materials, but because the existing materials painted out blend so well to the building behind, and we had a bit of a safety concern too with small children on stairs. We felt that the continuing the same material down the stair, and if we do look at the picture from the street level, it does tend to recede into the background. It's very difficult to see. It's not difficult, but it's less noticeable than something that would have been more open or rail-like or with a picket. So we felt that between the way the geometry of the stairs is falling away from the building and the angle of view up from Detroit and West 28th, that material
West
worked
28th,
better.
it's impossible to see, as you can see from the picture in the middle. Like, can't even see the 3-story brick structure other than the roof flashing. So
Sure, but the beauty and the curse of Google Earth is I'm standing on Detroit and just looking at it from there. So that's the view shed that I'm focused on or addressing right now.
Yeah.
And then related to along the building edge, I don't have a problem with the roof deck, but I don't personally love the addition and the expansion of the parapet. I think right now the existing building's in a nice proportion relating to the existing structure adjacent to it. As you increase the height of the parapet, I think it sort of changes the proportion of the building. Opening solid to void for the first floor openings versus above, and how it relates to the context next to it. I don't have a problem with the roof deck itself. It's just how we're enclosing that roof deck. I'm personally not in love with the solution right now.
well, for the sake of the commission, the building that existed before it got torn down, probably before there was a landmarks commission in Cleveland, was a 3-story structure. So historically there was a larger massing that anchored that corner, and the minimal extension of that parapet wall pales in comparison to the height of what was there.
It's not the height of the structure, it's how it now relates to the composition of the building itself.
Well, we are trying to maintain some of the line work, the transitions of the building. We did look at more open materials for that initially, but felt that the mass and being able to relate to the string course of the 3-story building and extending that around West 28th was, without increasing the surface area for the sign bands that we had approved before in considerable discussion back in June of 2020. This did seem to be the best solution for that between the options that were presented.
I think those are my comments on the design. Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is that roof deck going to encompass the entire surface of the roof of that 1-story building?
No, just partial.
How high is the current parapet wall above the roof of that one-story building? How high is it now?
I think it's it's like 6 inches.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so it's not, it's pretty low.
Yeah, it's not.
So whatever you put on that roof is gonna be visible from the street, even if it's set back from the roof line.
Well, that's the intent of raising the parapet wall.
Right, right. I'm getting at trying to see if there's a way to minimize extending upward that parapet wall. It doesn't sound, it sounds like without some sort of without raising that parapet wall, the roof deck's going to be visible from the street, correct?
Correct, and unprotected, safety-wise, so we do need to raise it.
Although the roof deck is not going to be encompass the entire roof, correct? I think that's what you said.
But if you go to the one plan that has the green, so you can see that the roof deck, even though it doesn't go all the way to the south, it does the entirety of that portion of the building.
So it goes to the north and to the east, the entire roof.
Correct.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. If it was oriented towards the south section of the roof, would it be visible from Detroit or is that West 28th?
Well, we would look, you could do that and minimize it, but there are some considerations with the construction of the existing building that are placing it where it is right now. Not only structural capacity of the existing building, but also the fire rating of the different components of the existing building. So that in combination with extending the parapet to incorporate it into the front design and turning that corner was important to us to maintain.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Edmond?
Looking at that roof plan we were just looking at, it looks that the parapet extends to the south about 15 feet or so farther than the area that you're planning to put the artificial turf on and presumably use as the roof deck area. And I wondered why that was, if it's just for more shielding of the view, and if so, would it make sense to, instead of extending it along the facade, have a little bit longer return that actually is at the change from the roof deck to the open roof?
That is something that we've looked at and was a point of discussion in design review. And looking at the mural and the composition of the mural versus the extension of the parapet, the initial response of trying to unite the new work to the existing mural through this parapet seemed to work best at this location with the return. And with that return was the only comment that design review had with respect to that. In the end, it seemed to have a good balance of proportion on the elevations, the way it was drawn.
So if we scroll up one sheet to the photographs, the street photographs, where on the mural does the parapet end roughly?
The parapet ends between the tiger's bandana and its left ear as we look at it.
Okay.
But what's not shown in this is that we have a door being inserted into the mural at the tip of the tiger's paws for the new restaurant.
Between the tiger and the bird.
Right.
And you are going to continue that gray band at the existing coping height across that would separate the mural from the parapet.
Correct.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Edmond. Other questions or comments from the commission? Okay, if there are no other questions or comments, would someone like to make a motion? Would someone like to make a motion? Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would move to approve the project as presented for the extension of the parapet and the addition of the stair.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Bonezzi, is that your hand up?
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. I will ask Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
No.
The motion passes 7 yes, 1 no.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you. Good luck with your project. We'll move on to our third applicant, located at 2803 Franklin Boulevard, the Nelson Sanford House, Superlative Group monument sign.
Good morning. This is Kyle Cantor. We've presented a few times, so I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So this was the sign's already installed. It was installed shortly after the completion of the renovation of the building. We've included photos and some of the adjustments that have been made already. There were to be gas lamps on top of these two pillars, which we removed based on feedback, and then we've adjusted the caps on the tops of the pillars. So I think everything else has been consistent with the submission.
Thank you for the presentation. Any feedback from staff before we move into the commission and committee?
The only thing that there is a 10-foot map setback that this falls into. However, because it's signage, that setback does not apply. Was one of the findings that in looking at this, that we should keep in mind for other stuff that comes along, Franklin, that there is a 10-foot map setback here.
Thank you for that feedback. Feedback from the local committee.
Good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the board. Nate Law, Ohio City Incorporated. So as Kyle stated, this monument sign was installed without approval and is now seeking retroactive approval. The committee did not have quorum when this was viewed, but they generally weren't a fan of the size of the support columns, and they believe that the signboard is out of scale relative to those columns. So without quorum, they recommended that this not be approved. Thank you.
Thank you for the summary. We'll open the floor for questions and comments from the commission. Questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Edmond.
So yeah, I have a question on the recommendation from design review that a 4 to 5 foot sign would be more acceptable, and I need to understand that a little better because and I completely understand the issue about the proportion of the sort of the size of the sign itself versus the supports. a 4 to 5 foot, that looks like it's about a 4 to 5 foot sign. Is that, can you elaborate on that sign size recommendation a little bit?
So I believe that what they meant was in total width, so with support columns and with the sign,
I see.
so 4 to 5
Mhm.
feet for that. So that because they believed it
So
was out of scale.
Right, so it looks like the sign itself, and then it says the dimensions is 48, so the sign itself is 48, and then we've got like 2 feet on either side of it.
Correct.
So
Yep.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments from the commission? Mrs. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm looking at this, there's a dimension there of 48 inches. That's the total height of the sign.
That's
What?
correct.
Height of
That's,
the pier. Right.
that's correct. The height of the pier.
All right. And what's the material of the sign itself?
I think it's included in the documents we submitted. Hold on, let me try to.
Can't tell looking at it whether it's a plywood sign or.
Oh no, it's not. It's not a wood. It's a printed material. Hold on. Sorry about that.
My question involves the durability, of the sign material itself.
Yeah, it's been there for 2 or 3 years and has not shown any wear or tear at all to date. So it was made. The material is made for this kind of application, but I'm struggling to find the description of the material right now.
And is there any illumination or?
Yeah,
the
this.
sign?
Yeah, it's uplit. So landscape lighting uplit.
I don't see the landscape fixtures, lighting fixtures in this picture.
Yeah, I'm not sure they were in when these photos were taken. They're in now. I'm sure I can get a photo, but it's just low voltage uplit floodlight that matching the uplighting that's on the building as well.
So is the fixture flush with the grade and then just focused up, or is it projected up above grade with a some kind of a concrete mount or?
No,
how is it?
the fixture is just it's on a stake flush with the grade, or maybe an inch off grade, and it's a wide flood, so illuminates the sign on both sides.
All right, and then that's on some kind of a photo cell, as it's not on all night, is it?
Correct.
And can you explain your comment about the looks like precast concrete caps on top of these masonry piers?
Yeah, it was suggested that those be thinner, so we made that adjustment.
And that's what's reflected in this picture?
Correct.
All right, that's all of my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Strickland. Mr. Tarasik? Ray, did you have questions or comments?
I apologize. I just have a couple of questions and I guess about the process here. Am I correct in understanding that we're looking for a retroactive approval here as well? That's what this is. And am I also correct in understanding that the local design review committee is not supportive of this? Am I correct on those two comments?
That is my understanding. Mr. Pettit, can you confirm?
Both of those are correct. We unfortunately sometimes have to review after the fact, and that's the case here. And we do have a disapproval from a local committee.
And I think that that's to my point in general. I guess to the applicant, let me ask this question to the applicant. When and how did you find out that this issue was supposed to have come before the Landmarks Commission?
Yeah, would take full responsibility for that. We were contacted after we had a contractor help us put this in, who's a friend, and we're not aware of the requirement to go through this process. So take responsibility for that, and we're contacted after the fact.
And I don't know, I think this commission's talked about this before, and I wish I had a solution to this. I don't. But it seems that these types of approvals are more common than they are rare anymore. And I know we talk about this, we struggle about this. I wish I had a solution on how we could avoid these. But I just want to make a comment that it does seem like these things are, and again, I'm not being overly critical of the applicant, more of, I guess, the comment that I've seen this as less of a rare situation than a common situation. And again, I'm at a loss to see how we can remedy this going forward. But thank you. I just want to make those comments.
I would agree with your comments because it does feel like we see this more and more, and asking for forgiveness rather than for support or approval from the beginning. In this situation, I am disappointed because we obviously spent painstakingly going through the process for the renovation of the house. It disappoints me that we just moved forward, the applicant moved forward with the signage, knowing how much care the ownership team and the Landmarks Commission and local committees have done to try to partner with the owner to get the renovations to the point that meets everyone's expectations. I personally probably agree with some of the comments the local committee made, that I do think that the piers feel out of proportion or too large for the signage panel itself. I don't think the sign panel itself is the right proportion for its location, but the piers seem excessively large. So it does trouble me because this is already installed and has, based on what the applicant said, for 2 years. So right now, I'm personally not in support of the sign. Mr. Bonazzi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Interjecting quick humor. It's funny how this always happens to me, but I drove by this sign last night and thought about this sign. And here it is in front of me this morning. And, I'd agree with my fellow member, Mr. Trosik. Like, we've seen this even since the time I've joined this commission multiple times. And every time one of these situations comes up, I don't know what to say or kind of how to deal with it. And I think that's another conversation that we can kind of start to initiate, but I would agree with everyone, and I'm not going to beat the horse dead. I'm not in favor of the proportions of this. The house is absolutely beautiful at night, and we were driving by looking at the beautiful house, and then immediately the friends who I'm with, and unfortunately all of my friends are architects, they saw the sign, they said, God, that just ruins the house. And then we kept driving. In personal life interjection, but you can see how that kind of carries out in day-to-day life. So I would agree that I'm also not in favor of the sign, but in terms of a motion to carry forward, I'm not sure what to do. That's not my expertise or knowledge base. So, but those are my comments. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that the applicant has some clarity with regard to the commission's comments regarding the sign, I personally think that the piers complement the renovated house, and certainly we're very familiar with this project it came before us multiple times. We had problems with the execution of the renovations, with things being done out of sequence and before all the approvals were issued. I'm very, I remember very well the process of finally permitting the renovation of this house. And I'm sure the owner was fully cognizant of what the requirements were. Personally, I don't have a problem with the piers. I think the sign itself looks like a temporary sign. And so I'm not in favor of the sign. I think that more design effort in terms of the building a sign cabinet and having an appropriate permanent sign is required here to replace the sign panel that's inserted between those panels. So I'm trying to provide some clarity in terms of my position with regard to my vote, which would be to reject the approval of this sign.
Am I allowed to comment back on that, or?
Yes, go ahead.
I think exploring what the sign looks like, the printed portion of the sign, would be something that would be much easier from our perspective. And not that that's the top priority here, but the pillar issue is a more substantial issue. There's concrete footers below those, and so on and so forth. So they're over support structures that are down into those footers. So I think, but with regard to the printed portion of the sign, exploring a different design or going through a different process to have a different material there and a different look would be, achievable from our side.
I would like to say something.
Go ahead, Giancarlo.
I agree. I don't, as Mr. Strickland mentioned, I don't really have an issue with the pillars, that they seem to be architecturally designed, attached to the house. I do have an issue with the sign, and we really haven't talked about the aesthetics of the sign at all, have we? As far as how that functions, and I don't like the sign. I could live with the pillars. And also my other issue is that if we were to reject this application, what would be the next step? Will those pillars be torn down, or I'm not sure what the procedure is. Does anybody know what the procedure might be in that regard?
Mr. Pettit or Mr. Brundage, do you want to interject?
Mr. Colicchia, Madam Chair, I think we have options here. I think we can separate out the structure of the sign, meaning the pillars, from the overall approval. I don't think we want to get into the content of the sign. This is a business identification sign. But I think we can separate out the sign itself in terms of materials, design, proportions from the pillars if we so choose to.
I guess the other issue I have is that, this has been before Landmarks, the building itself, several times. So I'm sure that the applicant was aware of what needed to be done as far as the sign was concerned. So that doesn't sit well. But at this point, I think, the pillars, I personally don't have any objections to. They seem to be substantial and rather classical and in line with the house in some ways. But the sign is very disturbing. I just doesn't do anything for me. So if we could introduce that subject, if we can, then we might have a way to resolve this issue.
Just to clarify my comments on the two piers, and it's not the materiality of them, it's just the proportion of them. They seem too large and bulky in comparison to the sign and or the house itself. They seem overbearing in the sign design and distracts me from the house design, in my personal opinion. The signage panel, to me, to your point, Giancarlo and Mr. Strickland's, is that it's too small in relationship to those piers also, and the materiality does seem a little flimsy, but in relation to how substantial the piers are. But for related to the piers, that's my personal feedback, is that I feel the proportion of them is too large in relationship to the house and or the sign. Ms. Anderson, you have additional comments?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with most of what is being said here. I do think the piers are probably too large. My concern is they're made out of like a stamped faux brick material, and I haven't driven by this to see how that material relates to the the 19th century brick on the house. If they were smaller, it probably would be less of a contrast, if that contrast exists. It's hard to say from these photos. And if it's possible to rework the sign so it makes the brick piers look less overwhelming, I might be open to that. But yeah, right now they are the dominant feature, and the sign sort of recedes from that. So I probably would need to actually go by and really look at this and how it looks in person. But those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. Bonazzi, additional comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to also clarify that I think when, I would agree with first Ms. Anderson, which I did not get to see, driving by the exact state of the material. But to clarify my comments, the particular issue that both myself and my friends had was kind of the thinness of the sign being supported between two very large objects. And so actually what you see most throughout the day is not actually the sign itself, but you see these kind of just two objects sitting in the middle of the landscape. So, if we take regardless, I do think they are out of proportion, as Madam Chair has, expressed. But if we take that out of the equation and we just think about the sign itself, maybe there's a possibility of changing the proportion of the depth of the sign so that it somehow doesn't feel so flimsy between these two very large objects. Maybe that could be a compromise, something to discuss. I don't know anyone else's thoughts on how to resolve the thing in between the two larger objects. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. Maybe we can talk about that here in a moment. We'll get through some additional feedback. Mr. Edmond?
Yeah, I agree with those comments. I think one of the challenges of trying to resolve the proportion, and I think that making the sign deeper would help that. And I also wanted to, agree with that comment about how these pillars kind of almost hide the sign the way they are. I think one of the challenges of trying to resolve that proportion issue is that the columns are where they are, and you can't move them farther apart, which is kind of what you want to do. I also have some concerns about the durability of the polyurethane sort of hollow shell construction of that. I don't have a section here, so I don't know exactly how it's built. But understanding that there's a post with a foundation, that it would be more involved to try to relocate that or something. I wonder if it would be possible to change the cladding on that. I'm assuming there's sort of a void space between the polyurethane shell and the post. And if a different cladding could be put around those posts so that the sign could become bigger within the dimension between the two posts. It could be a little bit more visible. It could have a little more mass itself, and then a different smaller cladding could be around the structural posts that are actually supporting it.
Yeah, that's a good thought. I mean, I think the brick to me blends well with the brick on the house, but
I agree with that, but I wonder if it could be, it looks like it's, 2.5 bricks. I wonder if it could still be a brick cladding, but just maybe 4 inches less. And it's 18 inches. I think maybe could it be 12 or 14? I don't know.
right, so try to work with the existing footers, but change the proportion of the piers
Mm-hmm.
and the redesign of the sign. I mean, if they're staying with an existing precast, that's a question that the ownership would have to answer.
Yeah, the way that I don't believe that would be possible, the way that the wood pillars and support structure inside of the brick is set up down into the foundation. So I understand what you're saying. I don't think I think we're back into the for lack of a better term, excavating of the whole thing at that stage based on how the interior support is. I think at one stage there was some discussion about, as Mr. Benezzi mentioned, moving maybe going from one sign between the two to two signs closer to the edge of each on each side, so that there was less of a setback when you're looking at it from each direction, which would improve kind of the visual proportion of the pillars to the sign. So that discussion was just a comment that was made at a previous meeting, I think, but didn't get any guidance on that.
Well, that's going towards more of a cabinet design that, would bring both sides of the sign closer to the edges of the piers.
Right. Yeah. So if whether the sign is what it is now or it was something else, bringing it closer to the face of the pier on each side that you're looking at it.
And are these current pictures of the sign from spring, I'm assuming?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe so that they're relatively current. I don't remember exactly when they were taken and when this deck was put together.
Well, I think we've made enough comments regarding the project. At this point, we need a resubmittal with potentially a new design based on the discussion we had, and conclusively reject the proposal as presented.
Well, we have two options. Either we table it and allow the applicant to try to make the modifications, or we reject it. I believe take a vote, and there is the option that it could be approved or rejected. At this time, I think, Ian, tabling it would be a recommendation to allow the applicant to make the modifications. Unless Mr. Pettit has any feedback on that.
I mean, Madam Chair, I don't think we should be redesigning the sign at the table today. I don't think we can solve all the design issues here. But I do think it would be appropriate to ask the applicant if he's agreeable to tabling this to, revise the sign based on the comments today and come back to the commission at a future date.
Is the applicant open to tabling it today to allow you to make modifications to your design?
Sure.
Okay. Well, with your permission, then we will. I will ask if someone would like to make a motion. Mr. Strickland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before we make a motion, I would like to review for the applicant's information, the timeline associated with tabling this project so that he knows the time restrictions associated with that move.
Well, the soonest that you could return would be 2 weeks. If there's room on the next agenda, obviously agendas do fill up quickly. Related to the timeline of tabling to reappear, Don, is it typically 6 months?
I will let Mr. Roberts confirm this, but I believe we can table for a maximum period of 6 months.
And Mr. Pettit is correct. Our rules indicate that the period is not to exceed 6 months.
So what that means is that we would your project would be put back on the agenda to vote to approve or disapprove after that 6 months. But it gives you the option to return within that 6 months with a modified design, and that is the design that we would vote on versus what we presented today. Did I state that correctly, Mr. Roberts?
Yes, Madam Chair, you did.
Okay. Mr. Strickland, did that help? And or to the applicant, does that help you with your timeline?
Yes, understood. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the, Madam Chair, if I could inquire in terms of the consequences, if the applicant doesn't return within the 6 months, since this is an existing installation looking for retroactive approval, does that turn out to be a rejection of the installation by this commission if no action is taken within 6 months?
Well, I would point out that there is a permit application pending. There's currently no permit for this installation or the sign. If they do not come back and resolve this, then they're out of compliance, and the permit would be rejected, and then it would become a code enforcement issue.
Thank you, Don. That fully clarifies my inquiry. Thank you.
Mr. Brunges, did you have something to add?
Yes, I know an inspector went out about this. I don't know if a violation notice was issued or not, but they have 6 months from any violation notice to correct it, and then if that is not corrected, then the Building and Housing Department can prosecute.
So obviously there are ramifications if this is not remedied. So we look forward to seeing you reappear with a new design or a revised design to allow us to conclude on this sign design. With that being said, would someone like to make a motion? Carlo, I see your hand up.
No, thank you, sorry, but I will make a motion. I will move that we table this project. Taking into consideration all the comments were made by the committee.
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
This is Carter Edmond. I'll second that.
Thank you for a second. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion to table passes unanimously.
Thank you. But we look forward to seeing the applicant. We encourage you to look at your design based on the feedback that you received, and we look forward to seeing you return with that revised design within the next between 2 weeks to 6 months.
Thanks.
Thank you.
This is Carter Evan. I need to excuse myself for just 2 minutes. I'll be right back.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next applicant, located 1466 West 29th Street, the Laura Bidwell. Welcome, Ms. Marinucci.
Good morning to the committee. My name is Antonia Marinucci. I'm the architect on this project. We were here for concept review in December, so in the interest of time, I'll just go over the changes that we made per the comments at concept. Carl, if you want to go through context. Okay, so next slide, Carl. I think this might be our former presentation. Yes, it is. Do you need me to send you the updated one, Carl?
Stand by. Let me see if I can find it.
Okay.
Talk about your changes in the meantime, and then when we have it up there, we can show it.
So comments last time included the consideration for the proportions of the second floor window on the front facade. So we decided to split the windows into 2 windows and match the proportion more closely to the first story. There was also the request to consider the window spacing on the south facade, which is not a primary facade, but we did also separate out the windows that are closest to the primary facade rather than coupling them to give a little bit more rhythm and variety to the window placement on that south facade. The other consideration is I did show the existing trees. Right now the property is a park, like a little parklet that is private to the transformer station, but open to the public use, to show that we anticipate losing 4 of the maple trees that are on site, but maintaining one of the maple trees, the birch trees along the back end of the property, and also illustrating that there are 2 substantial ash trees on the tree lawns flanking the property that will be retained. I think that is a summation of, we switched to instead of an aluminum standing seam roof, a zinc standing seam roof that we were hoping will patina nicely over time. And we decided to pursue true wood cladding over hardy board for the property. I think that that's pretty much all of the changes and the responses that we had to the concept design.
Okay. In the interest of time, to keep us moving, do we have feedback from the local committee?
Yeah, good morning again. Nate Law, Ohio City Incorporated. The committee was very favorable towards this project. They really like that it's going to be wood construction with the aluminum clad wood windows. So they believe that it meets the intent of the National Secretary of Interior standards. They appreciated the modern glass on the back of the facade. They thought that was a nice addition to set it, show that this house has not always been there, but it's still paying attention to historic and modern trends. And they did not take any issue with the zinc roofing that was proposed in the last meeting. So they were they approved this project. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback from the local committee.
Okay, Carl, you're back. Thank you. This is the correct presentation. So this is just, as you can see, the main change here from a site standpoint is just illustrating those trees, as I mentioned before. Next slide, Carl. And here's a little rendering that does also include the landscaping that will be retained in terms of trees. I do want to make clear that we will be coming back before the committee to approve fencing and final pavement material of the front walk, which we have not decided on yet. So if we could get, we'd like to permit, get rolling on the permit for the house itself and then be back for those front landscaping elements, if that's acceptable. Here you can see that slight modification to the front east and the side south elevations in terms of decoupling those two pairs of windows that front West 29th, or are more visible, I should say, on the south side. And then I also included a floor plan, which I don't believe our concept plan had, for reference. We also, Michelle had made a comment to specify that the studio space was qualifying as a bedroom, so that the property could be a 2-bedroom. And here is a look at that materiality.
Thank you. And this is a great improvement on, I'll say it's an improvement over, your design was very nice previously, but I appreciate that you've listened to our feedback and incorporated into the updated design. With that, I will open the floor, since I'm out of sequence, to the commission for questions and comments. Go ahead, Mr. Benesi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll keep it short and sweet in the matter of time, but thank you for listening to our comments with very deliberate, clear response. And I'm, very happy to see this design go forward. It's right across from, I believe, Rising Star, if I know that part of town right. So very well done, and thank you.
And I'll just complete my comments. I would agree. I think, the revisions you've made are very sensitive and really improve the design. I like the addition of the real zinc roof and, the wood cladding to really stay within the character of the neighborhood. Mr. Strickland?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only comment is regard to the jelly jar lanterns on either side of the front door. I would like to have the applicant consider an upgrade to those fixtures. Not to something, very elaborate, but certainly an upgrade from a jelly jar fixture. Thank you.
We can consider that.
That's a recommendation, Mr. Strickland, not a requirement.
Yes. And if there's any change made, just submit that to staff.
Will do. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from the commission? I'll just make the comment that regarding the paving and fencing, based on the amount that is on the street, I would feel comfortable personally with that going back to staff and not having to return the commission unless the staff felt that it was not appropriate and that it needed commission's feedback. Ms. Anderson, feedback on the design?
Thank you. I'm a little bit hesitant about the standing zinc roof. It's just, I like it. It's not something typical for the historic fabric of this area. That's probably my only concern here.
Okay. Other questions or comments from the commission, or would someone like to put forward a motion? Mrs. Strickland?
Must be my day for
It's
motion.
your day.
Yeah. So I would move to approve the project as presented with the consideration of changing the lantern fixtures on either side of the front door and recognizing that the applicant not be required to come back to the commission with the paving and fencing materials that could be presented to staff and staff could determine whether those need to come back in front of the commission.
Thank you for the motion. Do we have a second? Mr. Bernazzi?
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Not hearing any. Mr. Pettit, could you please call roll and announce the result?
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
We'll now move on to our next applicant, Site Security Bollards and Benches, located at the Huntington Convention Center at 300 Lakeside Avenue.
Hi, this is Kyle Gulott with Bowen. So kind of give you a brief history of the project and why we're looking at this. The convention center was given a report by the Department of Homeland Security, and they made a number of suggestions to make, the general areas safer, not only for the people outside, but also for the people inside, and especially along Lakeside. It's right on the road, and, there's however small chance it could be, but if a car were to come through that window, it would fly right over and down into the convention floor. So, looking at ways to make it a safer environment for those inside and outside. We've been working with staff for quite a while on this, and we're excited to present this. We think it's a pretty good idea what we've got going on. So next slide. So this is a blow-up site plan right along Lakeside at the entry into the convention center. And what we've got is we've got a line of bollards that are crash rated. Being that they're crash rated, they have to work in a specific way, meaning they've got to be 5 feet on center apart. Now, to break up the monotony of the bollards themselves, we're introducing these benches. And in a few of the bollards in front of the doors have these column covers or these bollard covers. And these covers are meant to coordinate with other benches on the site. It'll probably most likely be a hardwood covering, a dark, almost like walnut covering that matches the benches that are over on the west side of the Global Center. So we've got 3 sets of benches on either side, kind of flanking the entry. And then at the entry, we have these enlarged bollard covers. Next slide. So this is a little bit further view of the site plan. We also have bollards running up the east side to protect the open glass that looks directly down onto the convention center floor. And then over on the west side as well, we have bollards within the landscaped area to protect the glass on that side. All the site lighting, the existing signage, the existing landscaping, it's all maintained. The bollards fit within that setting. Next slide. So what these benches are, each bench has a vertical element that covers the bollard itself. It's it's kind of a single piece. And then on either side, as you're walking down, each one of these has a letter, and all the letters spell out the word Cleveland. Each one of these letters would be illuminated. One of the comments we got from Design Reviewed was just to make the letters flush with kind of the wood enclosure. So we have each one of these elements. The bench is on the inside face, and each bench is unique too. Not only does it have its own letter, but it has its own unique shape. So it's a very dynamic quality as you're moving down, as someone who's walking down, along Lakeside Avenue. So this is just one example. This is the E bench, or one of the E benches. In fact, this is the E that has a bench. The other E does not have a bench because it's right in front of the door, and the convention center wanted to, maintain as much open space in front of those doors as people move in and out. You'll see on the lower right-hand corner, those are the existing benches on site. And so the type of construction, the proportion of it, the materiality of it, this is what we'll be matching for these new benches here. Next slide. Just some elevations, so you can kind of see on the bottom how the letters, the word Cleveland, are spread out throughout the site. And then you can see bollards on either the east and the west side. Next slide. So this is a view. So again, the idea is that these letters face east and west, to kind of promote that walkability from one side to the other side. Again, a dynamic quality to it. Each letter kind of reveals itself as you get closer to it. And, looking down whether you're looking down from the east or the west, you can kind of see the letters spell out the word Cleveland. And again, they would be illuminated, mixing in, the nice warmth of the wood and the stainless steel of the bollard, which then matches the coloring of the curtain wall system along the convention center entry. Next slide. So just a number of views. Again, you can kind of see it lit up. Those letters, we think are really going to stand out, highlight these bench areas. The bollard line is set about 6 to 7 feet back at the curb. That way someone can open their door, not have to worry about hitting a bollard. Next slide. As you can see, as it wraps the corner, we maintain the existing lights, we maintain the existing signage that's already there, maintain the existing landscaping. So really meant to kind of fit in with all these elements. Next slide. Again, some more views of it. You can see the individual letter boxes that are in front of the doors versus the areas where we've got the bench that comes off of the letter box. Next slide. This is looking down on the east. You can see how the bollards protect all this glass area that looks directly down onto the convention center floor. It'll have an integrated metal railing that'll match the existing railing as someone walks up this ramped area. Next slide. There are a few areas around the Global Center that are of kind of concern from a security standpoint. Again, putting in crash-rated bollards that match existing bollards that are already on the site. These images are over on Ontario. We've got 3 bollards that lead into the side entry over there. Bollards protecting the patio space along St. Clair. Next slide. And then along the entry right off St. Clair into the Global Center, again, these are the same types of bollards that you see mixed in with the existing bike racks. But, to protect this, very sensitive, glassed area. And then one other bollard by the loading dock over on Ontario. There's an existing bollard there. We'll be placing another one to kind of maintain, the crash rating, the separation that these bollards need to have and protect the people moving up and down. And I believe that's the last slide.
Thank you for the presentation. We feedback from the local committee.
Yes, Madam Chair. This was reviewed by the Downtown Flats Design Review Advisory Committee a couple of weeks ago. It was approved with a couple of conditions that they make the letters flush to the box and that they treat the surfaces of the letter box tops to indicate that they're not trash receptacles. So those were the 2 conditions. I will confirm the architect's earlier statement that this has been through a long process with staff, both landmarks and city planning staff. And we're really thrilled that the applicants followed our entire direction, which was to make this more creative, to make it look like a destination and not just a march of utilitarian bollards down the street. This is a convention center. We wanted it to we wanted to speak to Cleveland. This isn't the Federal Reserve Bank. There's a different, set of issues here, but it's still a convention center. And I think staff totally supports the solution that they've come up with.
Thank you for that feedback, Mr. Pettit. We will open up the floor then for the commission for questions and comments. Mr. Edmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Pettit, I would second your comments about turning this necessity into a feature because you don't want this to look like a fortress. And I think this is a nice solution. 2 comments. It appears that the sort of outer or street facing edge of the letters is more or less in plane with all the bollards. And I wonder if the letters could be out in front of the bollards a little bit. Maybe the back edge of the letters aligns with all the other bollards. I'm afraid that they're going to get obscured as you're looking at it obliquely down the street, that you really just kind of see the line of bollards, and you have a great design idea, and I want it to be evident. I wonder if you could bring that outboard toward the street a little, bring the letters outboard toward the street a little bit, so you really read it sooner, and that gives that a little more hierarchy over the more utilitarian bollards that you have to have every 5 feet. It also looks like in the night rendering, like the D letter is partially obscured by the form of the bench coming in there, and it seems like you would want to resolve that so that the bench isn't obscuring part of the illuminated letter.
Yeah, that's something that we can definitely rework so that D isn't obscured. As far as the location of it, yeah, we'll look into it. My only concern is, when someone opens the door, how close can we get that, to the streets? A lot of it was kind of thinking, from the pedestrian standpoint. So I think they're quite visible because they are a little bit more inbound. So for someone walking up and down, we'll really see those letters. But yeah, we can look at, is there any modification on the position, still being able to avoid someone swinging their door open if they're dropping someone off right at the street level.
Yeah, I think just moving them even a foot or two would help. Thank you.
I would agree with that comment, Mr. Edwin. I think they will start to get obscured some during the day, maybe not as much at night. And if it could be pulled forward or pulled north to make them visible and break that plane of bollards, then they'd be more impactful. The comment was also asked if they are going to maintain just a singular white light, or could light changeability be incorporated to really celebrate, some of the things that they might do here.
Yeah, that's something we're definitely looking into. In fact, we've done it with other projects using color changing LED. So I think that's something that we'll look to incorporate.
I think that would be a great addition. I'm sorry, I just lost the hands that were up because I was talking. Other questions and comments from the commission? Ms. Petrus?
Yeah, that was my hand that was up. Thanks for asking that question. I love this idea, and I like the idea of being able to change the light feature to different colors, whether it's similar to like what they have in the tunnel at the main campus of Cleveland Clinic where it's changing, or if you wanted to do something like Tower City lights up for domestic violence awareness, breast cancer awareness, autism, and different things. So that would be a great element to add. It's just having that ability to change it. Thank you.
I agree with those comments. I think the idea of adding some color would be amazing. Otherwise, it's a very beautiful design.
Other questions or comments from the commission? I just have one clarification. It looks like these are, and I believe you mentioned and noted that these are stainless steel bollards, correct?
Yes.
Are the bollards that are on, forgive me, I don't know the name of the street that is on between the Hilton and Global Center and the Convention Center, those bollards appear to be like a matte gray or a charcoal gray versus a stainless. Are those also stainless?
So there are a number of different bollard types. You're correct. Along that would be the east side of the Hilton, kind of more towards Ontario, there are a series of matte gray, and then there are also a series of white bollards as well. And we felt, the stainless steel, again, kind of matching the storefront of the Convention Center entry along Lakeside was appropriate here.
And the ones that you mentioned around the Global Center, are those also going to be the stainless, or will those match the adjacent bollards?
Yeah, those will match the adjacent. Those are meant to be the more, I guess, white or light gray in color that are already existing on site along St. Clair.
It's helpful to know. Thank you. Other questions or comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Bonazzi?
My second time of the day, I do have to recuse myself from this project due to a conflict of interest.
Great, thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. Would someone besides him like to make a motion then?
This is Alan. I'll make a motion to present as approve as presented.
Oh, thank you for the motion. Do we have a second?
I second that.
Thank you for the second. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? One last comment, I'm sorry. Do we have any conditions related to the motion with things for consideration?
I don't believe there are any.
Okay, I would like to make the recommendation that we add to your motion that the applicant consider reviewing the location of the letters so that they could be pulled north and made more visible, along with revising the bench design at the D to allow the D to be fully visible.
So let's add that to the motion.
I agree with that.
Okay, thank you. So we have agreement on the addition of the recommendations. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Bonazzi has recused himself. Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik,
Yes.
Ms. Trott.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with one recusal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to your project moving forward. We'll move on to our next applicant located at 1144 Parkwood Drive, the demolition of a house. The applicant would like to open their mic, announce themselves, but maybe Mr. Brunges is going to update me first.
Hi, everyone. I am Valencia White. I'm with the Cleveland Demolition Bureau. And we're going to be presenting two properties today for requesting approval for demolition. Those properties are 1144 Parkwood Drive and also 10603 Pasadena Pasadena Avenue. So the first one, 1144 Parkwood Drive, this is a picture of the exterior of the property, and as you can see, it is in bad condition. So we're seeking the approval of the complete demolition of this 2.5-story wood frame single-family dwelling. It has a garage on it. The garage was built in 1964, but the property itself was built in 1900. The current owner has owned the property since 2013 and has not made an attempt to correct any violations of the structure. It has been vacant for 7 years, and the city has received 4 complaints regarding this structure, and we have boarded up this property 4 separate occasions. The current tax delinquencies are $14,154.84, which includes our board up costs of $1,056.42. Our plan is to clear the land, grade it, and seed it with grass. So this is just the site location. As you can see, it's in our Glenville Landmark District, which is a predominantly residential district. And this is more of a close-up context location of the site. So the red dot indicates where the property is in reference to the other residential structures. These are exterior photos. The middle photo is a rear view of the property, and the bottom right photo is the garage. The top photo is the driveway. Our exterior and interior photos were provided by one of our consultants, Nella Environmental Group, who did the survey of the property in December of 2021. So that middle photo shows the debris that's inside of the garage, and the bottom right photo is just the enhancement of the siding, exterior siding of the house that shows that the paint is chipping. The surrounding properties, the first one, 10939 Grantwood Avenue, as you can see, that property also needs work as well. And I'm not sure if it's occupied, but it does appear to have some building violations on it. The property to the north, 10938 Drexel Avenue, is well maintained. And these are properties that are located across the street, 1147 and 1149 Parkwood Drive. And then there's another vacant lot that's owned by our land bank, 1143 Parkwood Avenue. These are interior photos of the property we're considering. As you can see, the ceiling is in disarray. These are the stairway, the kitchen, and the front door. These are upper rooms that's inside the property. The bottom right is the room on the 3rd floor. And the top left is the stairway, excuse me, to the basement. And then all those pictures with the wood paneling are pictures of the basement. So again, our plan is to clear the land and grade it and seed it. Now open the floor for any questions you may have.
Thank you for the presentation. We will move on to then feedback from the local committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't think there's anyone here from the committee, but I will report that this was reviewed on January 20th, and it was approved unanimously based on the structural damage, the amount of water damage in the house, also taking into consideration the market viability of the house and the building's lack of architectural significance. It was approved unanimously by the committee.
Thank you. Mr. Bunches, do you have feedback on the site visit?
Madam Chair, do you want to go through the Pasadena Avenue one as well, and then we can just, I think it would move smoother since it's up to you on that. They had them both loaded together. Since I'm here, so we can do it. So I'll go through this really quickly. We did have the site visit a couple of days ago on the warmer day, which was nice. And the photos that were shown are accurate to the conditions. I'll just go through these quickly since it's about a month after they took their photographs. There is that in the corner, and the water infiltration has come down through both floors. We were not able to access the basement. We didn't feel it was safe enough to get down there. Just multiple rooms on the 2nd floor. Again, water coming through in that one corner. Also on the 2nd floor. This is 3rd floor area. It still has all the wood floors underneath, all the carpeting. But there were some nice windows, but overall, it's actually built in it was completed in 1914, the original garage in 1916.
Oh, thank you for that correction.
Okay, and then they were both built by Joel Hull. Did not find any significant, but you can see here that it's actually split off from the 2 parcels that fronted the other street. So it was a smaller lot.
Okay.
That's all I have for now.
All right. Well, thank you for the additional feedback and information on the site. We will open up the floor for the commission for questions and comments. Questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I tried to attend the site visit. We didn't get into the one house because there might be squatters in there. But yeah, I did see the outside, and the one on Parkwood is in really dilapidated shape. It's just, this is an enormous frustration for me because I think we should be addressing these homes long before they get into this deteriorated condition. This property has been vacant since 2014, so I'm sure, 5-7 years ago, there was a much better chance of being able to turn this place around, because it's basically a very nice home. It's a garage. It's a substantial, well-constructed home, but it can't be just exposed to the elements indefinitely without taking its toll. Detroit Shoreway had a model for interceding in these kind of situations. They would pay for the county to foreclose on the property. They would receive the property and they turned around and they would sell it to developers that they've vetted or rehabbers, people that had a track record, did good work in the community. In this market, I think the house renovated could be worth, 90, 100,000. So I think if somehow there was a mechanism in place to intercede before these properties get to the point where you can't renovate them, at least financially, it's not worth it. That's somewhere along the line that needs to be explored.
That's a great feedback, and I think you're referring to in a future state, or are you thinking that this house would qualify underneath that?
Well, there is nothing in place in this area to do that kind of thing. I don't think Detroit Shoreway is involved in that project anymore because the market is so strong in that area. They don't need to be like to intercede the last chance for these buildings.
Right.
But I think that model is there. It's just finding an entity to implement this model in some of these neighborhoods. Detroit Shoreway actually made money on this program. They renovated. They had transferred 400 properties to the potential developers, and it at least some years it paid for the staff. So it's something to look into. I'm not sure who would be the one taking charge here, but the model's out there. So I don't think we need to be sitting here at this point, looking at these sorry properties. And in addition to that, I feel for the neighbors. This is a concern of theirs. I'm sure it's been a real nuisance and an eyesore. And I just think especially in this market, probably that, like I say, that house would probably be worth 90, 100,000. If somebody had gone back a few years and taken on the renovation, they could either resell it or rent it out and be making a profit.
Right.
To me, it just seems that this is unnecessary. Very sad situation.
Understand. Great point. Mr. Brundges, do you have feedback?
Thank you, Madam Chair. To those points, I think one of the things that has come across with these particular demolitions, that we've had more communication with the Demolition Bureau than I think we've had in a long time. And one of the things that we are starting to work on is getting reports of their buildings that are in the demolition pipeline earlier. And they gave me a report the other day, and I've started sharing it with the local CDCs to say, here are the ones that are in the pipeline. Start looking into this now before it gets too far. We need to be more proactive in this, and I think working between departments, even in that little bit, to get the information into our hands so we can pass it on to even the city planners and the CDC to say, okay, here's what's coming up. What steps do you take now? Maybe we avoid some of this in the future. But again, we need to have a regular process. And since we have some willing partners to have those discussions, and I think with the new administration, I think a lot of things will change, and we'll have more information passing between departments now. And I think we'll all be working as a team better. But yes, we are looking at that. That's always been a concern of when do we get notified. So we're trying to at least get the skeleton of it going now, and then we can develop that a little bit more later on.
Yeah, this is Alex Bremowitz from the Demolition Bureau, and I'd just echo what Carl was getting at there. I think for properties both in historic and landmark areas and those that aren't, we need to do a better job, and we're making it a priority to do a better job of getting out in front of these so that the right people can get eyes on these properties and stabilize them where possible to avoid them going down this path. Because once we get to this point, it's hard to make it work, but I think there's a lot to be done to prevent properties from getting to this point. So I think that's a big priority, and certainly with our incoming director as well. So.
You're muted, Ms. Trott.
Thank you. It's great to hear that the conversations have expanded already, and look forward to it, continuing to grow, because I would echo, it's sad to see these houses come in front of us when it could have been prevented. Mr. Pettit, did you have additional feedback for us?
I would just say that I agree with everything that Carl and Alex and Michelle just stated. I do want to point out that the CDC we count on in this neighborhood in cases like this, the Famicos Foundation, they looked at the two properties we're reviewing today, and they just felt that they weren't able to take them on. So we're lacking that support in these three cases. I mean, Famicos is great. They've been especially helpful in restoring properties in the East Boulevard neighborhood. The Grantwood allotments, is really a challenge in the neighborhood, and we need to do better, because we're going to see more of this. We've already seen houses on these three streets, but Famicos declined to take on this one and the one you're about to see. I also want to point out that the councilman is in support of both of these demolitions.
Thank you, Mr. Pettit. We'll go back to questions or comments from the commission, additional questions and comments from the commission. Since we are reviewing these independently, then would someone like to make a motion if there are no additional questions or comments?
This is Alan. I'll make the motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for demolition.
We have a motion to support the demolition. Do we have a second?
I have a quick question. Is this a demolition for one of the houses or for both?
This is for the first house on our agenda, which is the 1144 Parkwood Drive.
Bob Strickland, I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. We have a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi,
Yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmund,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik, Ms. Trot.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. So the next property they were proposing for demolition is 10603 Pasadena Avenue. This is the front picture of the property. This is another 2.5-story frame, but there's a typo. This is a single family residential structure and it was built in 1910. It is currently in foreclosure and it has been in foreclosure since 2019. It has been vacant for 10 years. The city has received 7 complaints and we have boarded up this property on 3 separate occasions. The current tax delinquencies are $58,879.03, which includes our $2,266.51 board up costs. The plan is the same as the other one, to clear the land, grade it, and seed it with grass. So just some site views. Again, it's not too far from the other property. It sits within 105 and East 108th Street. The context view shows that's Cleveland Church of Christ on the end. And these are external photos of the property. They were provided by one of our surveyors, Mac Parent Consultant. They were taken in September of 2022. The surrounding properties, 10519 Pasadena, it's well maintained. 10607 Pasadena, and the property across the street, 10606 Pasadena. That one actually has a vacant lot that's well maintained by this property owner, and that vacant lot is 10600. So these are interior photos of the property. The front floor shows the kitchen, stairways, living room, and dining room. And these are the second floor pit photos. You can see there's a lot of old newspapers. The walls are warped. Additional rooms on the second floor, a lot of old newspaper and a lot of debris that's inside this property. This is the stairway leading to the basement. The green colored walls and the salmon colored walls are all photos of rooms in the basement. These are more photos of the basement. And again, the plan is the same, to clear the land and grade it and seed it according to our city specifications. So I'll open the floor for any questions you have.
I'm sure I did a separate site visit on my own and before the snow fell and noticed that there is a large hole in the roof that has been there for about 2 years, trying to judge that based on Google Street View photos. So there is probably more damage inside that we were not able to see due to the possible intruder that when we were inside. Some additional views. The garage in the backyard has not been maintained as well. The chimney is falling. There are bricks having been falling from the chimney. Just some of the photos from the first floor that we were able to find. There are some nice windows still intact, but and according to the calendar, it might even be earlier than 2010. I think it was November 2007 was on the calendar, so it's been vacant even longer than we thought. And then we have an OHI for this one. This was surveyed for the historic district and built in 1915 with alterations in 1972 to that front porch.
Okay.
Don't trust what they have on the county's website.
I see. You may have to become my first resource.
I'll teach you how to search for stuff in our records room.
Thank you.
I was very good at that. Thank you for the additional information. So then we'll move on to questions and comments from the commission. Ms. Anderson?
Madam Chair, this house is probably even more tragic than the last one in that the structures are around it are still in place. So it's the street is going to lose its consistency when this structure is missing. I'm not sure if it looked like on the interior, like there was a small fire or something. I don't know if that caused the hole in the roof, but yeah, when there's a hole like that, it's really, it does in the property pretty quickly. Yeah, and for Migos, they do a great job with the renovation, but I can understand where they don't have the capacity to do all of these. But again, I think there's got to be another model like the one I suggested that, you know, either Famigos or some other nonprofit entity could implement so that we can save these structures. You know, it's not very green to be tearing all these things down and putting them in landfills and then, you know, trying to build something that will never, ever be of the same quality of these homes, especially in the Grantwood allotment. Very, very high quality construction here, and it's a shame to see us losing it because of deterioration. It's actually almost sinful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions and comments from the commission? Well, I would echo some of what Ms. Anderson said. It's a shame to see that these houses have gotten to this point because they do seem, looking at the neighborhood right now, seems like it's a neighborhood that has high quality housing that you just hate to cause the ripple effect of missing teeth. Other questions and comments from the commission? Would someone like to put forward a motion? Mr. Edmond?
I'll move that the proposed demolition be approved.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Okay, with no further discussion, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson,
Unfortunately, yes.
Mr. Bonezzi,
I will echo that, but also yes.
Mr. Colicchio,
Unfortunately, yes.
Mr. Dryer,
Yes.
Mr. Edmond,
Yes.
Mr. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik, Ms. Trott.
The heavy heart, yes.
The motion passes unanimously with much regret.
Thank you all.
Thank you. That concludes our certificates of appropriateness. We'll move on to our concept plan reviews. We have one on our agenda today located at 1970 East 123rd Street, Province House. Demolition of the house and new construction of a family house. The applicant to open their mic, announce yourself, and tell us about your project.
Thank you, Chairwoman. This is David Bowen with Bowen Construction Services, which is different than Richard L. Bowen and Associates, just so you know. Bowen is ESOP, which is owned by the employees. Bowen Construction is owned by me alone. Some of the work that you've probably seen me construct before is the Cleveland Institute of Music student housing, the Tappan, and I've done 4 renovations of schools for CMSD. Christy could not be on the call today, so you're stuck with me alone. This shows you the site. It's 123rd Street. Next slide, please. Oh, and as we go on, we're just looking for demolition. We went through the design review. They had a number of comments. We listened to their comments, and we have some redesigning to do. So we will go back for conceptual design. The structure is actually a danger at this point, so we're just trying to take it down, but I'll go through the entire presentation so you get an idea. So this is the existing structure. These are images of the context around it. If you look at the bottom left and right, the little brown structure in the middle is the house that we wish to tear down. Next slide, please. This kind of zooms in and shows the two large structures next to it. The existing structure has had a number of additions. It's been torn apart and put back together a number of times inside. It's been open to the weather for a number of years, and it's actually falling down. Christy's family's been in Little Italy. She grew up there, and her desire is to move back. These are some interior pictures you can see. The far left one, you can see the structure is missing in a lot of places. Next slide. This whole wing is starting to fall down. Next slide. This is a separate wing that was added, and you can see that there's really no floor, and there's a cellar below. You can see the stairs going up to the second floor. This is the cellar itself on the left and on the right. Sewer's exposed. It's falling apart. Next slide. Now this is kind of interesting because going into the cellar, there's these beautiful stone foundation pieces. We are going to save those and use it in the new construction. Next slide. So this again shows you the structure itself. Next slide. This shows you the lot. It's 40 feet wide by 150 feet deep. Next slide. This shows how it is in comparison to the structures next door. So one of the things we're thinking about, the structures on both sides are very large. How to position the house like it is now, where there's light that gets into the side parts of the structures next door and into Christie's house. Next slide. This is a site plan showing it in context with the two structures next to it. It shows a courtyard in the middle, which also has a garage in it, and then an entry feature that goes into the gallery that brings you into the home. Next slide. This shows you in model, and you can see this wall, kind of the street wall that goes around the entry court. That's what we're saving the stone for. Next slide. This shows you the back of the house. It's going to be a modern design. It's going to speak of today. There's a number of more modern type structures on the street. Next slide. You can see kind of the light corridors going into both structures that are existing, plus the structure for her. Next slide. This shows you more where their garages are off back, and she's really using quite a bit of the lot, but as you can see, that's within context of the rest of the street. Next slide. This shows the first floor floor plan. You can see the front entry feature to the right, and then that goes into the gallery that goes into the back of the house. from the comments, and then you can also see the entry court, which has a garage behind it. There were a number of comments. They understand the garage. We're looking at going to a single panel door. It will be part of the architecture. You won't even know it's a door. The entry feature, we're reconsidering that from the comments, and the landscaping in the courtyard itself. Next slide. This shows you the second floor with the master bedroom and everything, and the stairwell going up. There's a number of upstairs terraces, and quite an interesting program. It's a single family home. Next slide. And then this is the rooftop deck and the den that's on top of it. The program is a little larger than our budget, so we're cutting some of these things out, and that's why we're coming back for conceptual design. We're basically here for demolition, which, and I know you're going to hear from Ray, but they approved from the design review side the demolition, but not the concept. And they had some great ideas that we're going to incorporate into the design. Next slide. This kind of gives you, the line sight from, the middle of the street. We want to make sure that we conceal anything that's inappropriate for the structure itself, because the structure should stand on its own. Next slide. And then this kind of talks about the materials. We're talking about using charred cedar on the top element, and then some panels on the first floor. There was comments on, this kind of garage sticking out front. So that's all going to be part of the architecture in a single panel. And then we're also looking at the front entry feature and the amount of glazing on the front of the structure. Next slide. That's it. So basically, we're here just for the demolition of the building right now. We're moving quickly to get it down so it doesn't fall down, especially with the snow loads we have. We are going to go back in front of design review as we picked up their comments. We're not quite there yet. And then we'll have a new presentation for conceptual design. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. We'll begin with feedback from the local committee.
Good morning. Ray Christosik, Little Italy Redevelopment Corporation. Yes, we saw this a couple weeks ago. We love the idea of it being a single family home. But as David mentioned, that we did have some concerns about the depth of the setback in the front, the garage door facing the street. There was some concern about the wall in the courtyard on 123rd. Like David mentioned, the elevation facing the street, to us, it seemed like the back of the front of the house was the back of the house, and it should be flipped and needed more glazing, like you mentioned. And some of the materials were in question, but in regards to the demolition, we did approve it, and the committee was unanimous in allowing the demolition to occur based on what we saw conceptually and the idea of it being a single family home. That's it.
Thank you for that feedback and summary of the feedback you received. Before we move on to questions and comments from the commission, just a clarification. This is on our agenda for concept review of both items and was not on here for a certificate of appropriateness or approval for the demolition only. Carl or Don, do you have feedback? Yep, Mr. Pettit. Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
That's okay. This was put on the agenda for both items as a concept review, and it's because we always look at demolition and the new plan in tandem, so that we don't demolish buildings, without some certainty that we support the new construction. But given the fact that the local committee has approved the demolition, I think the commission has the option, and also given the condition of the property, especially, and Carl has some more testimony about the site visit and the condition, but I think the commission has the option to take action on the demo separately if we feel it's appropriate, even though we don't have a final approval on the concepts for the new.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. Mr. Brunges, would you like to update us on the condition of the existing demolition?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looking for some history on this, we found some interesting stuff that this is not the original location of this house. We found a permit for actually moving the building, and these are a rare find. You don't see them all the time, but it was originally 30 by 40, 1.5 stories. So we know it's been altered over time. Don't have the exact times and when that was done because things weren't always permitted. It also tells us that it was moved from Carabelli to Carabel. So this street was originally Carabelli Street, but what was originally before that, Monroe Street. And this is basically what was the first subdivision in what would become Little Italy. And that dates back to the 1870s. So since we didn't know exactly where it was on Carabelli, we tried to find it out, and we would look for hints. And on the back of the permit, it was told that it was okayed by the Cleveland Electric Railway Company. So given the maps, right up the street, there's Carabelli. The arrow is showing where this got moved to. Here's the 1898 map, and then the Cleveland Railway is up here. So we had to determine which building was actually being moved. So we compare the 1898 map and the 1912 map, and noting that the building here has extended a bit, based on since everything else looks like it has stayed basically the same, we believe it was moved from this sublot right here on sublot number 5 down the street, because it looks like that is predominantly the only change that happened in this neighborhood between those dates. So also included that was a neat little thing, the consent of the property owners needed to relocate the building, but for the state law. But what it gave us is all the signatures of everybody who lived right next door within that area, which I think this is the first time I've seen this. I don't know how legal it would be because it's mostly in pencil, but it's there, and it's neat to see all these names and that they were included in this process, even back then. And then the other issue that came up, it was moved to sublot number 28, but its original address was 1966. So somehow the numbers have changed where now it's 1970. So looking up everything, it's been a confusing thing. So that's some of the interesting things you find when you're going through this. So our site visit was in December, as we noted, giving some of the different sides, context. You can see it's been added onto and moved around, and it's got a deep lot. The chimney in the rear is ready to fall down, I think, on its own. Tried to access through the rear door and could not, so we went through the basement. And I'll just give some shots of the basement here. To this nice stairway leading up, probably not to code either. And then you come in behind the stairway that goes up to the second floor. That's probably the original front door there, which is right next to the, what was it, that, so it's just on the other side of that wall there. And you can see sunlight through the roof. This is the addition on the north side. Then looking back into the kitchen towards that back door we tried to access. And then going upstairs. These are the rooms upstairs. Nothing architecturally significant. It's been altered over time. And that's all I have for now.
All right. Thank you for that additional feedback on the existing conditions.
Excuse me, this is Carter. I apologize, but I need to excuse myself for a prior commitment. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Redmond. We'll move on to questions and comments from the commission.
Actually, Madam Chair, I do have some additional information. We sent this over to city planning zoning staff for review. And potential variance is needed based upon what they were presenting at this time. It's a 150-foot deep lot, roughly 40 feet wide, located in a multifamily residential district with a 5-foot specified map setback from the property line. As proposed, it's 4,600 square feet on a gross floor area of a 6,000 square foot lot. So it would need a 1,600 square foot variance. For an interior lot for attached garages are permitted, provided they are located in the rear half of the lot, or provided that they have their entire width and height screened from a required or actual front yard setback building line by active use of at least 9 feet in depth. The fence in a residential district shall be installed and maintained height and opacity. Fences in an actual front yard and actual side yard, street yards shall not exceed 4 feet in height and shall be at least 50% open, except that it's also mentioned that anytime a fence is within 15 feet of a driveway or a street, anything over 2.5 feet must be 75% open. That's for safety, visibility of pedestrian. As this was presented to them, they felt that it was barricading against the neighborhood with the high fence, which was against the spirit and the intent of the zoning code. Zoning staff would not support a front loading garage on such a deep lot, especially on a narrow street. They are looking at walkability and safety, and they would like more active uses in the front and more eyes on the street. Thank you.
Thank you for additional feedback from zoning. Move on to and open up the floor to the commission now for questions and comments.
I'd like to make some comments.
Go ahead.
One, I'd like to thank Carl with his amazing passion for historical research and showing us those beautiful Italian handwritten names. Thank you for that. Also, I was at the site visit. The house is definitely seriously deteriorated. I think beyond repair. The interesting feature is this amazing collection of handcrafted Ohio sandstone that was used as a foundation base. And I'm glad that Mr. Bowen has suggested salvaging it and reusing it, because I think that would be a very significant feature to the new house. Thank you for that. That's it for my comments.
All right. Thank you, Giancarlo. Other questions or comments from the commission? Ms. Anderson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was also at the site visit, and I can concur that this house is in an advanced state of decay. It's just regrettable that we're losing another house of this vintage. It's a really old house. I can't tell you how old, but it's really old. And you know, after the mortgage crisis, we lost so many of these. You know, like it's probably pre-1880 structures that I regret that we're losing another one, but it's been altered beyond recognition, and it's really in very poor condition. So I support the demolition, regrettably.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Other questions or comments from the commission? I'll interject mine. I mean, I think based on the feedback that we've given, I could support and recommend that we move the demolition from concept up to a certificate of appropriateness based on the feedback that has been received from staff and the local and the commission members themselves. Regarding the design, I would echo some of the comments that were made by the local committee that based on the depth of the property, I currently don't support the wall and front loaded parking in the current design. I think that needs to be reevaluated and see if that can be pulled to the rear of the property to allow in the fronting of the house more on the street. We had a lot of conversation about its neighbor a few years ago, I think it was. I can't remember how many years ago, about the multifamily that was constructed a few doors down, and the need to really try to maintain such a a fairly strong street line that is occurs on this in this area. It really adds to the character of the street. It's unusual, so I'd encourage you to reevaluate that and try to maintain or establish that with this site also. Those are some of my comments. Oh, and I echo Giancarlo's comment about reusing the existing sandstone, anything that we can salvage to really pay homage to this, very interesting structure. I'll leave it at that. It has with such a strong history. I love that it was $2 to remove this structure at that time, which now would probably be like $200, $1,000 in real time. And that concludes my comments. Other questions and comments from the commission? Not Mr. Pettit?
Madam Chair, I just want to advise the commission that, and thank you, Mr. Roberts. We will need two motions today. One to move the demolition from a concept plan to a certificate of appropriateness. And then we will need a motion to take action on the demolition itself. Once we're ready to make motions.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the demolition. Is that what you're suggesting?
First, if you could start with the first motion of making the recommendation to move the demolition from concept to a certificate of appropriateness. Then once we vote on that, we can then determine if we're going to make a motion to approve the demolition.
Okay, then I make both of those motions as stated.
Okay, so we will start with the first motion of your recommendation to move the demolition from concept to a certificate of appropriateness. Do we have a second?
This is Alan. I'll second that motion.
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion, Mr. Pettit, I see your hand still up. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. It's down now.
Okay, Mr. Bonazzi.
The third and final one of the day, due to a conflict of interest, I have to recuse myself from this entire project. So just putting that out there.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bonazzi. Any further discussion? All right, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a motion to move the project from concept to certificate of appropriateness for the demolition. Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Bonazzi is recusing himself. Mr. Colicchio.
Yes.
Mr. Dryer.
Yes.
Mr. Strickland. Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
The motion passes unanimously with one recusal.
All right, so we have now moved the project from a concept, or the demolition for this project, from a concept review to a certificate of appropriateness. Does anyone have any additional questions related to that, or would someone like to make a motion on the demolition?
I make the motion for demolition.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
And the motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Mr. Brunges?
I just want to confirm that part of the motion should include the salvage of the stone for further use that they mentioned.
I agree with that. It should be included.
I apologize. Who made the second?
I believe that was Mr. Tarasik did.
Yes.
That's
Mr.
correct.
Trosik, do
And
you agree with that condition?
Yes, I will second the addition.
All right, so we have a motion, a second with the addition of that condition. Any further discussion? All right, then, Mr. Pettit, please call roll and announce the results.
Ms. Anderson.
Yes.
Mr. Bonesi is recusing himself. Mr. Colicchio.
Yes.
Mr. Dryer.
Yes.
Mr. Tarasik.
Yes.
Ms. Trot.
Yes.
The motion to approve the demolition passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. I really do appreciate all your time, and looking forward to get back to you and showing you the new concept design. We're very enthused about keeping the stone too, so I'm glad that's part of the motion, and we're going to use it. Thank you so much for all your time.
Thank you. We look forward to seeing you come back with the updated concept.
Thank you.
That concludes our concept plan review. We'll now move on to administrative reports.
I don't have much of a report today. Just want to let the commission know that Joyce Wong has been appointed by the mayor to be the new planning director. And she has been nominated by the planning commission, but she won't start her position until February 14th. So she will be joining us for the second meeting in February. And just to repeat what I said at the beginning, I'm expecting other changes on the commission this year as things develop. But that's all I have for now.
Thank you for that update. Are there any site visits in the near future, Mr. Brunges? I see your mic.
Yeah, I will be setting up one for the Garden Avenue demolition for that parking access for the lofts on Pearl. From the preliminary photos I've seen, it's in an advanced state of deterioration as well. But I'll probably just set up a time, and if people can visit with us, great. If not, I don't think it's just like all these other ones. It's not a big deal. I'll take as many photos as I can.
And climb through as many different awkward openings to get in there, right? Okay, well, thank you. Any other items that anyone has on the commission to discuss today? Not hearing any, then our meeting is adjourned, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks.
See ya. Stay warm.
Thanks,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all. We hit 3 hours exactly. Good job.